Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keith Hessel. I'm the owner and founder of Serve Business Consulting, and I am a retention consultant. It took me the longest time to actually figure out how do I want to present that? How do I explain what I do? And I realized that, to be perfectly honest, the easiest way is just to say that. But basically, what we do at Serve Business Consulting is we help businesses hold on to people on both sides of the counter, and whether that's through customer satisfaction surveys, employee feedback, or various other options to make sure that you have actionable insights into what people think about you. One of the most common things that tends to come up in that case is one single question. How do I deal with customers who are of the mentality that they are always right? That's a very old sentence, it's a very old saying, and it's really never been truly applicable. It's been twisted, it's been kind of warped over the last 100 years or so, since it first started back in the 1920s. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started into this. Um, and so that way we can make sure that we are always making sure that while the customer is not always right, they can always be educated. All right. So first and foremost, kind of like I was saying earlier, what do we do with Serve Business Consulting? Well, we are here to raise the bar of customer service throughout the front range. That is our mission statement. That has been what we've been trying to do since 2021, and really, it does come up from a dual focus perspective, because in order to hold on to customers, your employees have to be held on to first. So whether you're a business owner or in management of some kind, your customer, as soon as you start hiring people, becomes your employee. And then that way, that allows your employees to take care of the actual customers coming through the door. Now, we have a track record of doing this. We have helped clients over the last 4 years increase their customer satisfaction and increase their basically their referability. How much does their business come bring people in? We have helped them increase that by up to 10% within 6 months of starting to work with us. So it suffices to say, yes, I know what I'm talking about. My, Myself personally, I have over 20 years of experience in the customer service field, whether that is in food service, in retail, in management positions, even in volunteer positions. I've been doing this for a very long time. So, like I said earlier, is the customer always right? Well, no. That's a phrase that came out of Gimbals of all places, back in the 1920s, and it came from their sales staff being what we would today think of as the sleazy used car salesman. Think Matilda's dad. Um, they would basically do anything to get a sale across, even promise stuff that was unrealistic, just so that they could close the deal. And so Gimbals came out with this saying the customer is always right in order to get that to kind of stop. But it has a second prepositional phrase at the end of that sentence. There's me kind of channeling my mom's master's of English there. Um, it has a secondary prepositional phrase that has been it never really got said, it never really got used, and it kind of fell off the face of the earth when McDonald's took over this phrase in the 1950s. But it's in matters of taste. So when the customer's coming in, you're always going to assume that they know what they want. Now, are they coming to the right place to get that? That's where this friction will come from, that particular phrase, because it does come from the customer should never be misled. And that misleading can be intentional, which I'm assuming for those of you joining us today that it is not, whether you're a business planning consultant or in the car sales, in the honorable car sales mentality, whatever that case may be. But it does come from the customer should never be misled. Now, what should the phrase today actually be in our 21st century information at your fingertips mentality, courtesy of Google and AI? Well, it needs to be changed. It needs to be the customer can always be educated, even if that educated means that you're not necessarily the one who can fit their need, who can fill who can fill their need rather, who can fit their problem the best. And this really does tend to fly in the face of a lot of modern um, traditional business sense, where it's that scarcity mindset, where people have, customers coming in. You want to fill that customer's need. You don't necessarily want to send them somewhere else, whether that's a referral partner or even a competitor. But one of the things that Serve tries to do ourselves with raising that bar of customer service is making sure that customers are taken care of in the best way possible, even if that doesn't necessarily mean through your business. So, do you offer what they are looking for? First and foremost, you have to know your own offerings. You have to be able to make sure that the situation is one where you know the specific problems that your products or services solve. You're not just trying to be a one size fits all kind of category, but you also have to know where your limitations are. You have to have that data driven approach that backs up those expectations. You be able have to be able to drive continuous improvements, so that way, whether your product is exactly what that person's looking for, or if it's something that can be tweaked, not redesigned, not rebranded, but tweaked to fill their need, to take care of that problem that they're looking for. The only way to do that is if you're going to track their feedback. You have to be closely monitoring that customer feedback. And I'm not just talking through Google reviews, because Google reviews don't tell you diddly squat. You get the 5 stars from your friend, you get the 5 stars from your satisfied customers, but that only drives your ranking on Google. It doesn't actually let you know what's going on. It doesn't actually let you know who it is that you are serving. And then you need to have some way to educate your customers. You need to help them understand how your solutions can be the best fit for them. Or you need to help them understand that, maybe they came in with some sort of unrealistic expectation. Speaking of expectations, do you have a way to ensure that customers do understand what you offer and how you manage those expectations? Do you have a product? Do you have a service that can actually fill their need, or are you just kind of blowing smoke? And then once those expectations are established, once those expectations are met, what are you doing to go beyond those expectations? What are you doing to deliver that excellence? One of the things that Serve teaches is the Serve customer service method. And the last part of that is going the extra mile. What are you doing to make someone's day that's going to have them continue coming back to your business? So, what is customer service? So, customer service is a really outdated term. The modern, politically correct version of this is customer experience, because customer service implies just the interactions that you have with them in that moment. Customer experience is much, much more expansive. It is actually what your customers are going through from the very moment that they become aware of who or what you are, to the moment that they make a purchase or they sign a contract or whatever that end point ends up being. It's the soft skills that are used to take care of that person. And that doesn't just apply to customers coming through the door. Like I said at the beginning, when you hire someone, the moment you hire your first employee, that employee becomes your customer as the business owner, as the manager, as the hiring person, whoever. It is your job to make sure that that is taken care of. And there are a lot of methods that can come up with this. There's the 4 C's, there's the 4 R's, there's the 4 P's, there's so many different ones. The one that we advocate for, of course, is our own namesake, Serve. Now, what is Serve? Okay, so a little background information on this one. So Serve is an acronym that kind of takes all of the different customer service methods, all the different leadership methods, and it combines them into one easy to remember acronym. Smile, engage, relate, verify, and go the extra mile. Smile is really simple. It's kind of straightforward. It is what it sounds like. Start your interaction with a smile. And whether you're talking to people over the phone, whether you are conversing with them through a chat system, or if they're coming in to a brick and mortar location for you, how you greet them, how you start that interaction is going to set the tone. And furthermore, it's going to basically determine the outcome for you right off the bat. Engage is how do you actually cue that person into the fact that, yes, you are interacting with them, you are listening to them. Eye contact, paraphrasing, all of this plays a big part in this interaction. And it lets this person know, hey, this is someone that I can trust. This is someone that's going to take care of me. Relate, there's a reason that this one's right smack in the middle, because relate forms the foundation of everything. How are you interacting with this person? Remember, when they come to you, they have already made most of their decision as far as buying from you. So at this point, you're not trying to make a sale. You're just trying to make a friend. You're trying to make a repeat customer come through that door. And that comes from a lot of different aspects. One of the most common is small talk. One of the best things that I ever come across, there's a method for small talk, and it's kind of advocated by a guy named Kevin Knievel, and he is a LinkedIn guru. In fact, I'm probably going to tag him when I actually post this video everywhere. But he goes through and he actually changes the common small talk questions so that they become something that is actually something that people will interact with, rather than something that maybe people are just kind of going through the motions on. One of the things that we always talk about when I'm doing a customer service training, um, we offer a training called "It's a Blast to Serve," and one of the things that I will always throw out there when we get to the relate portion is, yes, use small talk, but keep that small talk relevant. Don't just talk about the weather. Don't talk about sports. Don't talk about politics. Those are the ones that'll shut people off immediately. I mentioned weather because I have one client in particular that always comes to mind. They're in an office that's surrounded by windows, and people come in from the outside all the time. And I specifically tell them, if you ask someone how the weather is, I will personally come up there and smack you across the face, because that's got to be one of the most irrelevant, transparent ways to interact with someone in existence. So find something on a personal level to relate with folks. Now, the verify, that one is the transactional aspect. This is where you're going to make sure that people know what it is that they are getting, what it is that is going to solve for them, and that they know that this is what they asked for. So you're going to paraphrase, you're going to confirm, you're going to verify every element of the sales process that you just went through, so that there is no room for any misunderstanding whatsoever. And then there's that element that I spoke about a little bit ago, the last slide, the extra mile. What can you do to make that person's day? It can be something super simple. It can be just saying, hey, thanks so much for coming in. I did notice on your profile that you have a birthday coming up. Happy birthday. And it can be something super simple like that. Another client that I work with all the time, they have coffee and tea available in their reception area. Offering a coffee or a tea to someone, that can be something that goes that extra mile without you even thinking about it. But it's going to be something that that person remembers the next time they come in. It's like, oh yeah, I don't have to worry about just sitting there, twiddling my thumbs or scrolling Facebook. I can go there and I can get something to drink too. All right. So one of the key aspects of making sure that the customer is always educated is educating the customer. Be able to clarify your offering. Be able to explain exactly what it is that you provide or what you do for that customer. That's where my whole introduction came from. I am a retention consultant. What does that bring to mind? Well, I help businesses retain people, whether that's on one side of the counter or the other. That, that part's irrelevant. I help them retain people. And how I do that is where we can go into more detail. But that's the offering that Serve Business Consulting has. What is your offering? What is your product or service that you do that you can explain in half a second? One of the things that we always run across, and this is as we're starting to work with a client, is teaching that you have to eliminate the words can't, won't, and don't from your vocabulary. If that customer is offering something that you don't do, don't tell them that, because that's going to lead to an escalation. Without fail, without exception, if you say, I'm sorry, that's not something that we do here. that's going to lead to an escalation because it has that negative connotation to it that immediately puts people on the defensive. It immediately puts people on, in the sense of you don't care about them, that you're not going to take care of them. So rather than that, you know, you could always try something like this. You know, it sounds like this is what you're looking for. Let's take a look and see what we can do for you. That's a fantastic way to, first and foremost, keep them in your doors rather than sending them off to a competitor. But it also lets them know that, hey, you heard what they're offering. And while you may not have something that fills that specific need, you have something that's going to help them out with what they need. Then you're always looking for continuous improvement. You're always looking for that feedback. What I had a client one time that we do a customer feedback survey with ask me, do we need to do this with every customer or just the new ones who, we've never seen before? That's a fantastic question. Do this with every customer because even your repeat customers are always going to have some form of feedback. They're always going to have some fresh idea that, hey, maybe they saw this on Amazon. It's similar to what you guys do. Is this something that you could change, that you could start offering yourself? It can open up new revenue streams. It can open up new product lines. It can open up so many different ways for your business to grow. And all you're doing is just asking your continual customers for continual feedback. Now, this goes on the other side of the counter too. How do you empower your employees to make sure that they are consistently meeting those expectations? You know, they can make sure that, yeah, what the customer wants is available. But how do you do that? You always first and foremost need to make sure that the expectations of your employees are clear cut. No room for ambiguity, no gray area. Make sure that they know exactly what you expect from every single interaction. This is where you oftentimes hear the words metrics or key performance indicators and KPIs, but those expectations give that concrete foundation so that employees know, okay, this is my lane, this is what I need to stay within, but I have all the freedom I need to to make sure that this customer is satisfied within these guidelines. And that is something that the serve method can help out with. The serve method provides you a 6 lane, a 5 lane, or 5 letters, a 5 lane highway that customers can move within the lanes, but they still have those guardrails on the sides. They still have that area where they can make sure that they're delivering that consistent experience for your customers. Having a positive environment, you can probably imagine, and this is something that we go over in our background leadership course, if you ever take a look at that. But having that positive environment, you see it all the time on LinkedIn, you see it all the time advertised on Facebook. What does it mean? It really boils down to one thing. If your employees know that you have their back, they're going to know that they can take care of this person even if something goes sour. And that does come up a fair bit, especially if you have to tell a customer, well, we we have these products available. If you're looking for something specific, here's where you can go. If they forget, to phrase it that way, and they use can't, won't, or don't, there's going to be an escalation. But if that happens, your employees need to know that you have their back in that escalation, that you're not going to try and pull the rug out from under them or throw them under the bus when they're dealing with those customers. Because at the end of the day, no one gets paid enough to take any sort of abuse from people. So when you have a customer who comes in, yelling, screaming, yelling all the sorts of words out of the book at them, they need to know that they have the ability to end that interaction and that you will back them up 100%. And then trusting your people. You know, you interviewed them, you hired them, they met the qualifications. Trust them. They're going to get the job done for you, always assuming that positive intent. Really, what ends up happening there is if customer service is failing, if your customer satisfaction scores are struggling, that indicates a lack of training, not a lack of intent, not a lack, not malicious intent. If you hired someone who, you hired them and they turn out that they were just there to sabotage your company, that falls back on your head because that's an indication that your hiring process was missing something or that your training process was missing something. That is not a reflection on them, that's a reflection on you. So there are some techniques that you can use when things go sour, and they're de-escalation techniques. One, probably the most common one, is called blast. This is an in-person or a one-on-one interaction technique that you can use to de-escalate a situation back down to where it can become productive again. Now, blast is something that we go over in our Blast to Serve training program that you can find on our website. And it's very simple. It's believe, listen, apologize, solve, thank. It was actually pioneered in the food service industry, and it's used all across the business landscape now. It's what you might call the industry standard for de-escalating upset customers. And you'll hear this anytime you call, if you ever have to call in for cable repair, you hear this with Xfinity, you hear it with CenturyLink, you hear it with Spectrum, you hear it with T-Mobile, you hear it with Verizon. If you call a call center with a problem, you will hear these 5 steps in action. I actually have to laugh every time I do, because me being me, I just go through, I check off the list as people are going through, and yep, thanks for believing me. All right. Okay, I know you're listening because you just paraphrased that back to me. And here comes the apology. I have to chuckle every time I hear it because it is that predictable, but it's so effective that it works every time. As far as some other techniques go, there's other things that you need to take a look at. Google responses, for example. How do you respond to those? Especially when you are dealing with a customer who maybe they had incorrect expectations, or maybe they thought that you did something that you never said that you would, or something along those lines. When you're replying to a review like that, especially through Google or Yelp, there is one rule of thumb to remember, and that is you're not responding to that person, you're responding to everybody who's going to read that review in the future. So you're never going to want to call out somebody or say, well, here's what actually happened. No, never do that. If you want some really good examples of what not to do, I always recommend take a look at some of the privately owned mechanic shops. Um, Car mechanics, God bless them. I have one that I will always refer people to because he does such a fantastic job. But I've not necessarily yelled at him, but I've reminded him on many occasions when he replies to Google reviews that you're not responding to the person, you're responding to everybody else. And it's a very simple way to do that. I'm so sorry this was your experience. Please, this is not something that we ever want someone to deal with our company. Please contact us at whatever, and just leave a response at that. That comes across as professional. That comes across still as you're caring about that person's opinion, whether that is caring about it to correct a misunderstanding or to correct a mistake, but you're not doing it in a way that calls that person out personally. So that's always the route that you're going to want to take. And if you want some more information on that, you can always take a look at our website. This is always in our blog posts. We have some articles on there that you can take a look at. If you ever need to copy and paste it, by all means. And then finally, I mentioned that no one gets paid enough to take abuse of any kind. One of the things that we advocate for when we do a Blast to Serve training, as well as our background leadership training, is the 3-strike rule. It's an exit strategy when situations are severely escalated beyond what you would normally see. This is where, like in person, for example, you had a customer come in and they got so frustrated with the person at the front desk that they spit at them. That's where you would consider a severely escalated situation. Or one of my own personal examples that I oftentimes bring up, I've worked in call centers many times, and I've been called many, many names, up to and including the Whore of Babylon. Um, that's a funny story for another time. But that's a situation where you need to have a way for your employees to exit out of those, where yes, they've gone through the blast steps, they've gone through everything that they can try, and this person is just not calming down. They need to have a way to extricate themselves from that situation, because otherwise your people are going to start burning out faster and faster when they don't feel like there's any point in them coming to work because they're just going to get yelled at. All right. This is probably what you were all expecting when you saw the title of this webinar. I try to avoid this at all costs, but it does happen. When does it make sense to fire a client? Now, I've only ever had to do this a blessed handful of times, but when I've walked other clients through this process, these are the only three situations where it is acceptable to fire a client. First and foremost, they have unrealistic expectations. They basically, this is where you would consider them to be a Karen. I turned off my camera so you can't see, but I am putting air quotes around that for anybody who might watch this who happens to be named Karen. But really, what ends up happening here is they have demands, they have expectations that are unrealistic, inconsistent, unreasonable. That's where you consider parting ways. And that's after, explaining to them, no, this is what's in the contract. If we need to change that, here's how we do that. Or this is what we offer. If you're looking for something else, here's some resources that you can take a look at. It's after that educational piece. Abusive behavior, of course. If you have a customer who consistently comes in and cusses out your employees, get rid of them. They do not deserve your business. There is nothing that they should be doing to continue earning your business. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life or in your office. And that also falls under disrespectful conduct. And this is where it becomes kind of your own sense of morality. This comes with your own sense of proper behavior. You may have a client who, they disregard the policies, they disregard your terms and conditions. You may have a client who, they consistently try and have employees disregard safety requirements. I know we had a couple contractors show up for some of these webinars. Those are clients that, yes, by all means, fire them on the spot, because when it's a situation where it can open up liability issues, when it's a situation that can open up legality issues, that is not a customer that you need to have. In fact, that's a customer that you need to get rid of very quickly, because they'll end up costing you more money than they would ever earn you. So there are a couple things to bear in mind. We don't encourage just firing customers willy-nilly. And everybody will get a copy of these slides here, but these are just a few of the things to bear in mind that it can be if you're just firing customers without taking those first three situations into account. And so, just taking a look through there, it can cause damage to your brand. It can cause, a loss of referrals, a loss of goodwill. Basically, it can burn a bridge. Now, if that's a bridge worth burning, by all means, I'll hand you the TNT myself. But that's where you do have to be very careful. You have to be very judicious in how you do so. So all of this comes down to knowing yourself. Know your customer service method, know your customers, know your employees. And remember, when you have employees, those employees are your customers. They're the ones taking care of everybody else for you. Now, this is where I will make the full-blown sales pitch. If you go to www.servebc.com, you can take a look through our business resources section. You can also take a look, and if the background leadership or the It's a Blast to Serve trainings sounded of interest to you, those are available on a one-on-one basis. They cost $200 a pop, upfront pricing, but you walk away with more practical, with more applicable, personal ways of handling pretty much any customer or employee interaction. Now, if you'd like more information about that, this QR code signs you up for our monthly newsletter. I don't spam your inbox. I don't send out a whole bunch of stuff that is irrelevant for you. This is a once a month newsletter. It goes out on the first Monday of every single month, and it gives you a whole bunch of practical applications for Serve. And it also lets you know, who in the community are we keeping an eye on? Who in the community has demonstrated these principles? Because we do a monthly business update. So if you're curious about that, if you're curious about being featured in our newsletter, let us know. Scan the QR code, shoot us a quick email, give us a quick phone call. We would be more than happy to help out in any way that you can. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining. Again, my name's Keith Hessel. I am the founder of Serve Business Consulting, and I am a retention consultant. If you're curious about that, if you're curious about what we do, if you want more information or to sign up for our next email or our next webinar, That website, one more time, is www.servebc.com. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.